Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, the New York Association of Black Journalists, also known as the NYABJ, offers professional development workshops, seminars, and networking mixers for Black media professionals. The president of the NYABJ joins me to share more. What kind of opportunities does the NYABJ offer? Then, the African American History Act is aimed towards helping educate people on the complexity of African American history and the impact of racism. The U.S. Rep for the 16th Congressional District in New York joined me to speak on how he is urging leaders to support this act. How will this act help support educational programs in African American history? After that, Let's Make a Movie is a hands-on training program that is designed to teach our youth participants all aspects of filmmaking. Director and the founder of the Bronx Film Initiative joins me to discuss this program. Why is it important to give our youth a hands-on experience in filmmaking? And finally, there has been a rise in people speaking out against the use of gas stoves. The Climate Justice Campaign's coordinator for We Act joined me to discuss why people are now speaking up about this. What are the harmful effects of gas stoves? So stay tuned, all this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello everyone, I'm Kibin Alleyne and today is Tuesday, March 7th. You are now watching Open, a live program bringing the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at Bronx.tv. In support of Black professionals in media, the National Association of Black Journalists created a community providing innovative and quality programs. The nationwide community has several chapters, including the New York Association of Black Journalists. President of the New York chapter, Bonita Sostre, joined me to discuss the importance of this organization. Bonita, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, to start off, can we just talk about the overall organization that is the National Association of Black Journalists? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So it's an organization that started many years ago, and it started for one mission, and that is to help journalists of color, Black journalists, brown journalists, everybody. Everyone's welcome and accepted there. There's chapters all around the country. It's not just New York. Like you mentioned, there are chapters everywhere. And our biggest event is the convention that we do every summer where many journalists get their start, they get their first jobs. There's a ton of panels and learning opportunities.
Now, what is the mission and the goal of the New York chapter of the organization? And I guess, how do you make it a little bit different from maybe the other chapters?
So the New York chapter, we're one of the largest chapters that there is because we're New York. We're the number 1 news market in the country. And so therefore our events are a little bigger. We have more people coming out. We have a lot of on-air talent that you see, at the network level, at the local level. We do a ton of events and panels. Even though, we're getting out of the COVID, we still do a Zoom panel every month and an in-person event every month as well.
Now, when people hear journalists, they often think of a reporter or a writer, but who qualifies to be a part of this association?
We take student members, we take content creators. We understand that the world of journalism has changed. So it's not just someone who's like on air holding a microphone. It's a producer who's behind the scene. It's someone with a really cool YouTube channel that's building content every day. It's podcasters out there. The New York Association of Black Journalists has their own podcast called The Sidebar. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Music. So those are places where by coming into our organization, you can add stuff to your resume and you can say, yeah, I host my own podcast, where you may not have the opportunity if you're not a part of the organization or just don't have a job in that industry. But we welcome everybody.
I think that's so amazing. And I definitely wanted to highlight that because I was also surprised to see like, oh, wow. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, wow, there's support for me there too. So I think that's truly amazing. Can you just talk about the benefits of joining, this type of organization or association?
Absolutely. So it's a family. It's a networking community. So there are people that you're going to see who are going to help you go to your next job, get your first job, or just if you need advocacy, you need someone to talk to, you're having issues within your job. We are an advocate as well. So we will go and talk with companies and say, hey, like, like, let's work on this. Let's see how we can get things changed. So it's the networking aspect. As I mentioned before, we have all the events. It's the learning aspect. If it's something you're like, oh, hey, I've never thought about this, or I'm curious about this, we're probably offering a panel or have a member that I can connect you with, or someone is willing to connect you with to learn more about whatever that facet of journalism is.
Now, why is it important for Black people? And you also mentioned that other people of color, have these units and these communities. Why is it so important to have that, especially in a career, I guess dealing with media and journalism?
It's so important. So I went to an HBCU. That's a historically Black college. I went to Hampton University, go HU. And there I learned the importance of being around people who understood my background. They understood the ups and the downs. And NYABJ is the same way. You're in a community with other Black journalists who understand what you're going through. And that might be something that you're not going to get from a larger organization that don't focus on having people who have had those similar situations.
And could you just say, probably what inspired you, or what was that moment that you knew that this was something that you wanted to be a part of?
I was in college. I was getting my first internship, and I don't have any friends or family in the business. I'm first generation college graduate now, but I say college student, and I just didn't know. And I had a professor, Will Sutton, who is part of NYABJ, and he was just like, yeah, you need to be a part of your local chapter. We had a Hampton University chapter, and then I became part of my New York chapter after I graduated. And there were so many amazing events, and I met so many fabulous people who were willing to help me and just be mentors toward me. So that's when I knew I have to do this. Like, if I'm getting this mentorship, I want to continue to give mentorship.
And I think that's also really important that you mentioned that you didn't know anybody in the field, because I know sometimes people from certain backgrounds, our family members didn't have those same opportunities. And so sometimes when you don't have those spaces, like, you can lose out on those opportunities. So I think that's so amazing that you brought that up. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, the organization's workshops and seminars. Can you just give us a little bit more about, what goes into making those?
Oh my goodness. So we have a programming committee, and the programming committee is one of our largest committees, and they work very hard in making sure that we have both an online Zoom event as well as an in-person event. So we recently did an event with the executive producers of daytime talk shows. So we had the executive producer of the Sherry Shepherd Show, the executive producer of the Jennifer Hudson Show, and the executive producer of the Tamron Hall Show. These are huge shows, and these very important people took out an hour of their time to be on a Zoom call all together. Some of them were in LA, just to talk to our members about like what it takes to become an executive producer. So it takes a lot of time and effort to put them together, but they're usually really well received, and people come out, and our in-person events are similar.
And why did you want to further offer these different types of opportunities, especially I also want to add that it's not just for college students, which I think is amazing, because a lot of the times, usually only people in college get to kind of experience these things where they're like meeting people, but it could be somebody who's in the middle of their career or maybe switching careers. So can you just talk a little bit about the importance of that?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, we also have a high school program. So we have a high school program. We want college students, and we have mid-career people, early career people, and veteran journalists who are all part of the association. And that's what makes it a full circle and really encompassing, because you can talk to someone who's been in their career for 30, 40 years and someone who's mid-career and who's looking to climb the corporate ladder and become a manager or a director of a news station. So that's what we bring. That's why we do so many different types of panels. The executive producers for daytime talk shows, those are executive producers. When you come out of college, you're not going to get that job. But right. For a mid-level person, that was a great learning opportunity for them to learn how do you get on the right track in order to one day get that executive producer position.
Now, what can people expect when they attend these types of events?
It's like a family reunion. It's everyone's getting together, everyone's happy to see each other, everyone's as welcoming as possible, and you're probably going to sit next to a stranger or be with someone who came by themselves, and that's okay, because everyone's so welcoming and willing to just talk, and we don't need awkward icebreakers. Sometimes we just do some fun trivia and we get things moving.
Now, speaking of the trivia, you recently held the Black History Month brunch. I attended that, and it was also hosted by former Bronx Net reporter Darissa White. I was just really excited to be there. I thought it was really great. But can you just talk a little bit, about how that event went for you?
Absolutely. So I started planning that event back in October. That took a long time, and we knew we wanted to have it at a Black-owned restaurant, which is why we picked Sugar Bar, which is Ashford and Simpson's restaurant. And it was just great bringing everyone together for a really great hearty meal and to celebrate Black History Month. And like I mentioned, we did some really fun trivia and gave away some great prizes. So it was an event where there were some people who never come to an NYABJ event there, and there were some people who come to everything. Right. And it was just a nice time where people enjoyed themselves and had great conversation and fun.
And I want to add that was my first time going. So, why is it important to kind of have it, it's not this exclusive thing. If you're not a part of the association, you can still attend these events. Why did you want that to be available to so many different types of people?
Well, with new people, we bring in new energy and we do new things and we learn about new things. So every new person is a new learning opportunity. So I want people to come and for them to learn something or to meet a new person, because now you have someone new on your Rolodex. The journalism industry is so small that you're going to meet someone someplace else. And it's always good to know someone, if you're going to a new situation.
And I want to just let people know, sometimes it can be scary to go to these types of things, especially if you're just not that type of outgoing person. But the energy was very just so friendly, and I was sitting next to people that I didn't know, and we were just talking, and things like trivia kind of just gives you a chance to talk to different people. So I thought that was really amazing. You did a wonderful job with that. Now, I understand that you will host the Boss Babe brunch for Women's History Month. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I'm really excited. Just the sound of it just sounds amazing. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So we are partnering with another female-led organization, Adopt Femme, and we are going to be coming together. We've rented out a really cool space. We're going to be doing lots of pampering. We're going to have little facials. We're going to have our nails getting done, little manicures, all kinds of pampering spa type activities, as well as some brunch, some mimosas, and some great inspiring talks from different people. We're going to be bringing in some people to talk about salary and some people just to talk about self-care and the need for, especially as Black women, to take care of themselves and not just work, but also just remember that you need to relax sometimes. So that's what we're hoping to do with that.
Now, I'm really excited, and I think it's so important because usually when you have organizations that focus on, let's say, a minority, and it's just maybe your racial or ethnic background, sometimes people forget that there's intersectionality within that, and there are also women, that are in this organization that would like to be highlighted as well. So can you just talk about the importance of having this moment and highlighting Black women within the NYABJ?
Absolutely. So everyone says it, strong Black women is what you hear, but it's really important, like you said, to highlight them, to share them, to have them share the knowledge that they've gained in, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about salary transparency and just making sure you're working so hard, you're getting paid fairly, you're pampering yourself, you're taking care of yourself, you're highlighting those journalists and those other just professionals within the industry who make the wheels turn. And that's why we want to do this. It's also Women's History Month, so right. It's an easy peg, as we say.
Now, what are the steps to actually join the association?
It's really easy. You go to nyabj.org, and that's where you go to find out more about our events. We also are the same on social media, so Instagram and Facebook. We have a link tree with everything in there, so you can sign up to be a member there. And take care of everything right there. It's like a 2-minute process, not even.
And what would you say to somebody who maybe has this imposter syndrome where they feel maybe I'm not ready yet, or maybe I'm not successful enough yet to join this? What would you say to them?
I would say everyone's ready. Everyone can join. I mentioned we have high schoolers. We do a high school program called First Take, and we have some professional journalists that have come out of that. So from high schoolers all the way up into veteran journalists, everyone is welcome. Everyone is accepted, and we have programs for everybody.
And do you offer any type of, the awards or recognize, different types of journalists? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So our second annual Juneteenth Gala will be on Juneteenth. It's going to be at the Water Club. It's going to be hosted by CBS News correspondent and anchor Michelle Miller. And we are so excited for that. The tickets are on sale on our website, NYABJ.org. nyabj.org. We are having an early bird special going on right now. So it's going to be a fun event where we will be recognizing our Black Excellence Awards. So our finalists were just released for those awards. So they were going to be giving out 6 different awards in different categories: sports, network news, local news, podcast, radio, etc. So those will all be announced come June 19th at the Water Club, and it'll just be a really amazing event where you get to put on your dancing shoes and get dressed up and have a fun night out.
Well, Bonita, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
The Boss Babe Brunch will be hosted on Saturday, March 11th from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. To find out more about this event, please go to the NYABJ website at www.nyabj.org or follow them on social media at NYABJ. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more Open right after this.
Jason, let's go see your room.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner!
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I saw you guys out there. We're in the family. I thought you were on my team.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut. The one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink. Or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking. Now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed. Better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead. Catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back. Urging our nation's leaders to address America's history with racism and white supremacy, Congressman Jamaal Bowman and Senator Cory Booker reintroduced the African American History Act in both the House and the Senate. Congressman Jamaal Bowman joins me now to discuss the act and the steps needed to help America finally move forward. Congressman Bowman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you.
Now, can you talk a little bit about what the African American History Act is?
Well, first of all, African American history is American history, and it's about way past time that we stop separating the two. I know we have a Black History Month where we often take the time to reflect and learn about Black history, but Black history should be taught throughout the year, just like everyone else's history. The importance of this bill is to make sure that we invest in the National African American History Museum so that they can create curriculum that can be used by school districts across the country, so that the teaching of African American history is accurate and precise and captures the totality of our history. And it's very important for legislation like this to be introduced and passed, not just at the federal level, but throughout states as well, because we see what's happening in places like Florida and Texas and other states where they're trying to push back against the teaching of accurate African American history.
Now, you mentioned Florida, and I think that's such a great point, because I really want to know your opinions on this. Why do you think that, we struggle, especially when it comes to education? Why is there just so much controversy around this in American schools?
Well, hate is rooted in fear, and the fear is rooted in, if I have to share space and place and resources and power with other groups, I will no longer sit at the top of this racial caste system that we have in our country. We have to acknowledge the reality. The reality is our country was born of white supremacy, and white supremacy continues to live in the DNA of America, whether it's our political system in terms of who's in political power, or our economic system in terms of who has incredible wealth in our country. We have to tell the truth about our history, who we are, where we come from, how we've gotten here, and then move forward together. But the fear is of this idea that if I, continue to educate, I will empower. And the more I empower, I will take away the power that I have. As we know, throughout the times of enslaved Africans, literacy was illegal. You will be raped and lynched and killed if you try to learn to read as an enslaved person. And so, unfortunately, governors like DeSantis and others are trying to take us back to that.
Now, as mentioned, you and Senator Booker plan to invest $10 million over 5 years to support African American history educational programs at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Can you expand on, how these funds will just support these educational programs in general?
Well, you have to pay people to curate the information and build the curriculum that's necessary. So this is 10 million over 5 years. This is 2 million per year. You pay individuals to create the curriculum, but then there's also travel involved. You have to collect artifacts. You have to engage with scholars all over the country to make sure you have present day Black heritage and culture and accomplishments as part of this curriculum, as well as historical information be part of this curriculum as well. Another key piece that isn't often talked about, when we talk about African American history, it's also important to talk about African history as well, because we are part of a diaspora that have all been victims of the transatlantic slave trade. But we were also part of nation building and democracy building that many European nations came to learn from and help to start their civilizations as well. So it's about teaching the totality of our history accurately, and the investments go towards people and the curation of the information that's needed.
Now, these educational programs will support and just teach, obviously students, other teachers, and parents. Now, I think it was so interesting that parents were included in this. Can you talk about why that was important?
Well, I'm a lifelong educator. Even though I'm in Congress, I'm still an educator, and I spent 20 years in education before coming to Congress, and 10 years as a middle school principal. Parents are essential to the overall education experiences of their children and of a community. So it's important to have parents at the table learning along with their children. I'm a parent of 3. My oldest is 21, my second is 13, and my youngest is 8. And while they go through their school curriculum, I am learning along with them. So the process of learning is a collaborative ecosystem that includes all stakeholders, and parents are central to that. So absolutely, parents need to be a part of this. And many parents like me did not learn about our history when we were in schools growing up, which is part of the problem.
Now, in the last few years, since we're on the topic of just talking about parents and education, a lot of outlets are just reporting that many Black Americans are opting for homeschooling their children. And I'm just curious to know your thoughts on that. Could it be the controversy just around teaching African American children and other children just, the history of race in America?
I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is, unfortunately, our public school system, because many aspects of it is rooted in white supremacy as well, but also a narrow view of what education, learning, and intelligence is. And oftentimes, public school systems struggle to meet the unique needs of children and meet the unique needs of families. So families have taken to making a decision to have their children homeschooled. This is why we need a revolution in public education, not just with regard to the teaching of African American history, but the teaching of emotional intelligence, human development, health and wellness, 21st century skills like curiosity, collaboration, creativity. Our schools need an upgrade because in many ways they are rooted in 19th century America, and we are on our way to the 22nd century. So this is why we need a revolution in public education. That's why parents are making these decisions.
Now, I'm curious to know, what could be done to ensure that more school-age American children, across the country, because I know right now it's like focused on the museum and, certain places can get this education. But I think to move forward, it needs to be like kind of like a group effort. So what could be done to make sure that across the country, more students are learning about American history, which includes, the reality of African American history?
Well, we need parents and students and teachers to get more involved in their local school boards. School boards are very powerful and they make essential decisions that determine what curriculum is taught in our schools and how curriculum is taught in our schools. So absolutely get involved in your local school board or your local municipality to engage members of the city council, trustees, mayor's offices, if you will, to make sure parent voices are included in what's happening in our schools. Also, parents and all of us need to take the initiative to learn on our own. Social media and the internet is a gift and a curse. There's so much information out there. You can listen to lectures, you can listen to debates, you can learn about different books you should read, and you can watch documentaries. And there is accurate information, a lot of it, but there is inaccurate information as well. The point is to listen to all sides, think critically, and then go to your local library, your local bookstore, engage with your local community so that you can have a collective learning ecosystem in addition to what should be happening in public schools.
Now, what are your thoughts on local or leaders who just are against, teaching of African American history and race in America? And what can parents do if they live in an area where a leader is against that?
Yeah, that's incredibly heartbreaking and disappointing because our democracy doesn't work unless the electorate is fully functional and literate and have high levels of education. So to withdraw or not allow a certain aspect of history to be taught, that is something that is damaging not just to the particular group, but to all Americans. So that is just heartbreaking to even hear. Parents have to be loud, organized, and push back very aggressively against the marginalization or erasure of their history or anyone's history not being taught in our schools. And then they have to organize to vote people out of office who are making these decisions. They count on our apathy and our complacency in terms of, how they make these decisions. They know we're not going to push back. Now is the time for us to aggressively push back.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and just talking about this really important conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you would like to stay informed about all the work Congressman Bowman does, please go to his website, www.bowman.house.gov, or follow him on social media at Jamaal Bowman NY. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.
Kids!
I don't want to talk about it.
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 Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency.
Kids, you all right?
This family's prepared. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan. Go to nyc.gov/readyny or call 311 for more information.
Welcome back. With a mission to provide a space for creative expression, the organization Bronx Film Initiative offers opportunities for young, aspiring filmmakers. Let's Make a Movie is just one of the many programs this organization offers to bridge the gap between the dreamers and the doers. Joining me to discuss the BFI is the director and the founder of the organization, Christina Richardson. Christina, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Now, can you just tell me a little bit more about the organization Bronx Film Initiative?
Yes, so I founded the Bronx Film Initiative in 2017 in an effort to, again, bridge the gap between dreamers and doers. As a filmmaker that grew up in a historically marginalized neighborhood, I didn't have a lot of access to the world of like filmmaking and storytelling and directing, but I always had a passion for it since I was 8 years old. And I was born in California, so, I was acting and there was Hollywood right there. But when my family migrated to New York, I didn't really see a pathway into the industry like I did when I was in California. So I decided to create one.
Now, I love that, the term the dreamers and the doers, because I think that when we think about, becoming an artist, becoming an actress or a filmmaker, for so many people, it is a dream, but we don't often have the opportunity to actually pursue that. So, I think it's amazing. Now, what I really love is that, there's several programs that are aimed towards teens and young adults. Why did you want to focus on this age group?
Well, for me, it was because I knew what I wanted at that early age. I think I was born to be a creative. I've always been a storyteller. So I wanted to focus on that group because when you are exposed early enough, it can kind of determine where you decide to take your life. And if you are made aware of career opportunities and just the possibilities of being able to work in that space, I think it's great to catch students at that age where they're having to make those decisions about college and about what they, are deciding to focus on. So I thought that, middle school and high school was like the perfect age to target.
Now, there was a concentrated effort to bridge the gap for kids in low-income neighborhoods. Can you just talk about the challenges, that arise when you have big dreams, but you come from a community that has very limited resources?
Yes. I think the fact that being in a historically marginalized community, oftentimes the difference between you actually achieving those goals and those dreams that you have is just proximity. And you don't have access to certain resources, certain training, and just knowledge of the film and television industry. It can seem like such a far in the distance a thing to do. So I thought it was important to target those neighborhoods because that's where a lot of creativity and the culture comes from. It comes from, marginalized people. It comes from Black creatives and Black and brown people. I just wanted to be able to, I wanted to make sure that I provided resources to our community so that they can have the same chances as someone else who may have more opportunities presented to them at an early age.
Now, this kind of leads to my next question. And I guess it's kind of like thinking about the future, but, how can opening these doors for, underserved youth change how we see the film industry today? Like, I guess, what are some of your hopes for that? Or, just, as a fact, like what could be different?
I think the number one thing is representation. We always talk about representation and getting more stories out there. However, we don't necessarily have that bridge to reach back into those communities where these stories are being created. So if we can reach out to the young people and to get them trained early and get them the resources that they need to take a part in storytelling and have their voices heard in a way that people will pay attention. You know what I mean? I think that's really important. I think we'll change the face of the industry. I think eventually this will lead to more representation. It'll lead to more diversity in storytelling. And honestly, people in these communities will be able to see themselves on television if we get them access at an earlier age.
And I also want to add that I think, when people often hear the term representation, they think like in front of the camera, but it's so impactful, who's behind the camera as well. And I know there's always been controversy or a lot of opinion about who's telling our stories. So I guess, what are your thoughts on that? On just, having somebody from your community tell your story?
Yes. Well, I think, I have this quote that I say, it's about the lion and the hunter, right? If nobody is telling the story of the lion, the hunter will always be glorified. And it's kind of the same thing for us. It's like we need an opportunity to tell our own stories because then that's where the authenticity will come in because we will be the ones giving our own personal experiences. It's never going to be the same when you have another culture, attempting to tell the story of another culture. It's always a better thing for us to tell our own stories.
Now, one of the programs you offer is Let's Make a Movie. It sounds so fun, so I just love the title already.
Yeah.
What inspired the creation of this program?
Oh, man. So for me, I know a lot of students or a lot of young people in these communities, we face a lot of challenges in life. It's just, it's just how it is, coming from the hood or, whatever you want to call it. We face a lot of challenges. And the process of filmmaking is extremely therapeutic. So in my mind, we take a holistic approach to our programming. So we focus on the process of creating, not only just the fact that you're able to create and you're able to learn about different career opportunities, but you're able to go through that process with your peers from script to screen, and you're able to see it through, and then you're able to see a final product and celebrate your work and your dedication to something. And I think having that sense of ownership over an idea and seeing something through to completion, it really will change a student, to be able to say, wow, I really did that. I was a part of that. We had so many obstacles and we didn't give up.
Right.
Because as you know, filmmaking is problem solving. And if you can make it through the filmmaking process with your peers, working with industry professionals, you get to that big screen, there's nothing like it. And that's the part that makes our program different.
Now, what are some areas of filmmaking participants can explore? Because I know it's like a huge, just field. So what are some of the areas they get to explore?
We literally explore all of them, from the conception to screenwriting to storyboarding, shot listing, cinematography, set design, production coordinating, the actual production, sound, gaffers, the whole G&E department, hair and makeup. We go through the entire process with them. Like, it's not just point and shoot. It's we bring in an entire production and we place students within that production wherever they feel like they want to participate, and they have to contribute to the production in that capacity from beginning to end.
Now, the goal of the program is to make a short film, and this is a massive accomplishment for even experienced filmmakers, people who are seasoned in the industry. So, what do you hope the kids learn from this experience?
Well, our program, because we work, a lot of our program, we work within the New York City Department of Education because we are vendors for the DOE. We tie in social emotional learning with our programming. So students are getting that holistic care that they need as far as just their emotional development, but they walk away with so much. They walk away feeling accomplished and full. They walk away with better communication skills, creative and critical thinking skills, just being able to present your ideas in front of a group and hearing no. I think that's a valuable skill to say, what, I thought of an idea, my peers didn't like it, let me come back with another one. Like facing fears, public speaking. There's so many different transferable skills that they learn from this. So when they walk away from the program, they literally, are just an improved individual.
I think that's so amazing, though, because I think a lot of times when we work with kids, people are afraid to say no to them, or they try to make it nice, so like everybody's ideas, going to make it. But I think it's so important that it's like, in this industry, sometimes it's tough, and you are going to hear somebody say, maybe that's not the best idea. So I think that's amazing that you guys are kind of like prepping them in a safe space to kind of hear that. So I love that. I also just want to add too that I think that this is probably happening in an exciting time, because I think with social media, we see that a lot of these kids have these really cool ideas. And I think some of them are already like kind of making like little movies, on TikTok and other social media platforms. So, how has that, influenced some of the work that you do, just the use of social media with young children?
Yes. So actually it's so funny that you mentioned social media, because because of convergence and media has changed and students are it's easier to make things now, we still want them to have a leg up. We still want them to have that experience of creating things at a higher level and a higher production value. So our program exposes them to that. And we did a project where we took the skits from the Lauryn Hill album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and recreated the skit in a classroom setting. And the kids thought of it as a TikTok. So I'm able to kind of tie in what they're familiar with the process of actual video production. So I utilize it because it's bridging the gap from them to this business.
Now, can we talk a little bit about the event at Lincoln Center? I think that's like kind of huge. So
Yes.
can you just talk a little bit about that?
So we actually had our premiere last year at the Lincoln Square AMC Theater, right by Lincoln Center. And it was a huge turnout. This was one of our larger Let's Make a Movie programs where we spent a year making a film, developing it, writing it, shooting it, casting. We went through the entire process on a huge scale. And we were able to show the film to their friends and family, and people from the Department of Education and different celebrities came just to see their film. And I think it's important because I always want our projects to culminate in a screening or a red carpet, because I want the students to feel celebrated. We want them to dress up and put on those suits and ties, and we want them to walk the red carpet. We had paparazzi for them taking their photos, but they had a sense of just accomplishment. And it was such a tough journey to get to the finish line, because filmmaking is such a tough sport, and I call it a sport. But they were able to see it through to the end, and they were celebrated for it in the best way.
Now, I think that's just amazing. Can you quickly just let us know who is eligible to join?
So we work with New York City Department of Education. If you want to join or you're interested in becoming a part of the club, because once you go through our program or one of our programs, you are now a part of a club of just networking opportunities and internships and all types of resources that we provide to students. We also look for college students. We have students from Fordham University that are film students that are looking to put their experience to use. So we bring them in to actually also work on our projects. And then we have seasoned industry professionals that also come in order to mentor our college students and our high school and middle school students. So it's basically a win across the board for everyone involved, because the best way to become a great filmmaker is to do it. And by making these films and making several films throughout the year, you get that experience that you can put on your resume, but also it helps you find your voice as a creative. So it's just, if you're either, you can be a high school student or college or an industry professional looking to give back, looking to exercise that muscle, we want you.
Well, Christina, thank you so much for joining me and
You're
talking
welcome.
about that. I wish I had this, so thank you so much.
That's my favorite thing when people say, like, I wish I had this when I was a kid, because me too.
Right.
So I made it.
Now, if you or someone you know would like to sign up for any of the amazing programs Bronx Film Initiative offers, please go to their website at www.bronxfilminitiative.org and follow them on social media at Bronx Film Initiative. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Open right after this.
Even though we didn't grow up together, he's my favorite brother.
Hey, sis.
I'm the baby of the family, and he's the gentle giant.
What you know about Port Georgia?
Man, please, that's a classic.
You know when they say people are a rare breed? Yeah, he's that.
Sorry, I'll be back in a few hours.
Don't worry, Shug, you know I'm for you.
I know.
Go get the football.
That was my favorite memory. He was always for you. This is a true story of me, Bridget Floyd, and this guy, George Perry Floyd Jr., my big brother.
Found my heart out there in the open. Trees make you feel smaller. Can't help but get lost again.
Feel the beat of nature at a park or forest near you. Find a forest and music inspired by nature at discovertheforest.org.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
STEM is everywhere. Like here,
behind the scenes of The Walking Dead.
When we break down clothes, we tumble it with trisodium phosphate, rock salt, and dish detergent.
We stitched together images of our model and created a 3D set that can be walked through in a VR headset.
We're able to turn 12 walkers into 1,000 walker boards.
STEM can create new worlds on and off the screen. What will you make with STEM? Get inspired at shecanstem.com.
Welcome back. Concerns regarding the harmful effects of gas stoves makes its way to the forefront. Environmental justice advocates say these stoves could be a threat to the planet and to public health. Climate Justice Campaign's coordinator for We Act, Carforo, joined me to discuss the dangers of gas stoves and what could be done to avoid them. Annie, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, can you first just tell me a little bit more about your organization, We Act for Environmental Justice?
Of course. So We Act is a 35-year-old community-based organization. We were founded in West Harlem to address environmental racism and have continued organizing ever since. We now serve, most of northern Manhattan, but we really advocate for environmental justice communities at the city, state, and federal levels, as well as work on research, education, workforce development, everything to really help improve and make healthy communities for people of color and low-income communities that are often at the front lines of the climate crisis and are exposed to a disproportionate amount of pollution.
Now, if you're not in, this type of field where you're working or super passionate about environmental justice, you may have missed it, but can you just talk about, when the debate regarding gas and electric stoves began?
Yeah, it's funny. It's not really a debate. It's kind of a refusal to accept fact, because there have been decades of studies over the years that have really identified the health harms of using gas stoves and burning methane gas inside of your home. But it has recently come back into the spotlight, and We Act actually recently completed a pilot project called Out of Gas and with Justice, where we were collecting our own data and measuring the air quality impacts of transitioning houses in a NYABJ building in the Hunts Point area of the Bronx from gas stoves to induction stoves. And so we saw firsthand the impacts that gas stoves have on your indoor air quality. And unfortunately, the gas lobby is a very well-funded propaganda machine that has spent years trying to dissolve this kind of this research and have done a really good job at convincing people that gas is superior, people want to cook with gas, people should have gas in their homes, when all of the evidence points in the opposite direction.
Wow, that's really unfortunate. So I feel like it's kind of like taking advantage of people who aren't as aware about this, because I think a lot of people just have no idea that this is even happening. Now, can you just talk about, what the harmful effects of gas stoves are?
Yeah, so when you are using a gas stove, which, by the way, I used a gas stove my entire life. I always thought gas was better, and this study has definitely changed my mind. But when you are using a gas stove, you're burning methane in your home. And when you burn methane in your home, it releases really harmful air pollutants. And the particular air pollutants We Act was concerned with was nitrogen dioxide, which is an air pollutant that when you breathe that in can really hurt your respiratory tract. It can increase the likelihood of developing asthma or increase the severity of asthma. And carbon monoxide, which a lot of people know can be deadly in high doses, but even if you're exposed in low doses, that can have impacts on your heart and your cardiovascular health. And so when you are cooking in your home, which is, often small spaces, especially in New York City, maybe not a lot of ventilation, those air pollutants are released into the air and exposed to you and your family, and can have, especially over long times, pretty significant impacts to your health.
Now, you answered one of my questions, which basically was going to be just, is it harmful to, your immediate personal public, your immediate area? But how is it affecting maybe the larger environment or our planet?
Yeah, it's a public health issue and it's a climate issue, right? Because methane is a greenhouse gas that actually traps heat and is heating up our planet. It is 25 more times more potent than carbon dioxide. So methane is, warming our planet at an incredible rate. And gas stoves rely on methane. Heating our buildings relies on methane. And this is... there's also studies that have shown that, gas stoves, even when they're off, can release methane. And so buildings in New York City really are responsible for 70% of our greenhouse gas emissions. And so decarbonizing our buildings or getting our buildings off of fossil fuels and moving them to electric substitutes like electric stoves is one of the most critical steps our city needs to take to meeting its climate goals and reducing its emissions.
Now, fossil fuels, I've heard the term so many times, but it's still so, confusing to me, or hard for me to wrap my head around it. So I'm sure there are other people who feel the same way. Can you just explain what that is and how it's harmful?
Right. So when we are burning gas, right, when we're driving our cars or we're turning on our stoves or we are using our hot water, which is relying on our water heater or a boiler, we are burning gas and it's releasing into the air, it's capturing heat, and it's warming up our planet. So when we are using and burning fossil fuels, we are putting greenhouse gas emissions into the air that is then responsible for heating up our planet. And we have known the effects of greenhouse gas emissions or burning fossil fuels for a very long time, but we are actually really now starting to see the impacts of climate change. And we are seeing a change in climate here in New York City, but across the world. And so it's really critical that we reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions we're putting in the air, because we are going to be seeing hotter summers, wetter seasons. We're going to be seeing more flooding. Other areas, out west are going to be seeing more droughts. But this is going to have really catastrophic effects on our climate if we can't take action to really reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we burn and greenhouse gas emissions that we emit.
Now, how are electric stoves an improvement?
So electric stoves are a major improvement because, first off, they're not burning anything in your home. So what I want to also clarify is when people think electric stoves, they think, the coil, they think really, not a great stove, bad, not very efficient. But in our study with our participants at the NYABJ building in the Bronx, we actually provided induction stoves, which are a state-of-the-art electric stove. They are incredibly efficient. They can boil water in 3 to 4 minutes if you're making pasta. And they're really safe. So they don't, you don't have an open flame in your house. The cooktop actually stays cool. The only thing that's getting hot is the pot itself. And so it's a really innovative and honestly very wonderful way to cook. And what I think is encouraging is that with our participants, everyone who received an induction stove, every single one preferred the induction stove. And when they were given the option, do you want to switch back to your gas stove? Not a single participant wanted to do so. I got to cook on this induction stove, and I am telling you that the second I have the opportunity to get rid of my gas stove, I would absolutely switch to an induction stove. But the biggest part is, like I said, they're not burning these emissions in your home. When we were measuring air pollutants in homes with gas stoves versus induction stoves, we could actually see how when you cook with a gas stove, you see that air pollution jump, and when you're using an induction stove, you see no change, and that is hugely impactful to your health.
Now, there are people like Texas Representative Ronnie Jackson who are in favor of gas stoves. I think this is really surprising after hearing, even what I'm hearing now. Why are so many people just hesitant to give up on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising from Texas, like natural gas, methane, that's one of their biggest industries. But I think that the gas industry has done a very good job at pushing their propaganda, pushing their lobbying, convincing people that gas stoves are a superior form of cooking. There's evidence that they have paid influencers, social media, chefs to talk to their, followers about the benefits of gas stoves and how much better they are at cooking. And this has worked. It's been very effective at convincing people that there aren't better alternatives out there. And I think what our group is trying to do especially is show that there are far superior alternatives and that they need to be more accessible to everybody, including renters and multifamily buildings. Because when people get access to this technology, they switch. They don't really remember why they were so attached to their gas stove. And so I think it's just one of those issues of access.
Now, how is New York addressing this issue of, the use of gas stoves?
So New York has taken some pretty significant steps to try and mitigate the impact that gas stoves have on people's health. One of the most recent new laws that have passed was Local Law 154. So we worked with a couple of other environmental justice organizations to pass this in 2021. And this bans the use of gas in new construction. So new buildings starting in 2024 that are under 7 stories will no longer allowed to have gas hookups, which means they'll be all electric, and 2027 for buildings that are above 7 stories. This is only for new buildings. There was a lot of lobbying from the gas industry to try and convince people that we were coming in and taking gas stoves out of people's homes. That's not the case. We wanted to start with, the lowest hanging fruit. Let's start electrifying all of the new construction that we build. And now we're really advocating to increase access to programs through the Inflation Reduction Act at the city, at the state level, that are giving people the financial incentives to make these switches themselves, because we want, again, this to be accessible to everybody, not just those that can afford it.
Now that's perfect, because I really wanted to talk about, just the idea of being environmentally conscious is always associated with people who have more wealth, or, sometimes it feels like a costly effort just to think about the planet. What are your opinions on that? Have you found this to be true? And are there ways that people from lower income communities can, be environmentally friendly and conscious?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a talking point that has gone around, but I think one that is less, has gotten less attention is the fact that the federal government released a report that we spent $165 billion on climate disasters last year alone. So the cost of inaction is going to be a lot more expensive than the cost of action. And I think at WeAct, what we are very aware of and advocating very deeply for is making sure that this technology, the investments that are necessary to help people move off of fossil fuels, to help people be, more sustainable and more environmentally conscious, are not just going into, the communities that have all of the resources. We want to really make sure that environmental justice communities like Northern Manhattan, like the Bronx, have the same exact access and the same exact information so that they can make their own decisions, but they have the resources to do that. And so that's a big part of our work, is making sure that we're getting funding, so that we're getting funding into buildings so that these, especially lower income buildings, multifamily buildings, can do a lot of this investment, this work to electrify and to get the fossil fuels out of those buildings and make them a lot healthier environments for the people that live there.
Now, I quickly want to just add to that. I know that a lot of people at least from my community, just isn't aware about all of this. How could that help so much, for people who work in these type of organizations like you do? How could that help you do your work when more people understand what's going on?
Yeah, it's something that we actually found during our study. So we were working with Spanish speakers as well as English speakers in the Bronx, and we found that there were no materials explaining induction cooking or electrification that we could give to our participants to explain to them, why we're doing the study and why it's important and why you should care. And so we ended up having to make all our own materials. And that was something that we realized there needs to be a better public relations media campaign out there to push the benefits of electrification, of induction cooking, because right now, there's so much more media out there that pushes gas.
Right.
And so when people are also exposed to this technology, so we had a couple of participants that were on the fence. They didn't want to give up their gas stoves. They weren't sure. And then their neighbors got the induction stove and they went over and they got to see how the stove worked. They got to cook on it, and it immediately changed their minds. And so again, just that exposure and that access is huge for helping people understand that, there is an alternative. I understand, talking to them about their health. Oh, I have had these impacts. We were working with a couple of participants who said, I did notice when I turned my gas stove on, I would have chest pains, or I would start coughing, or I'd start wheezing, and I do have asthma, and helping them make that connection that, very likely could be the fact that you're burning gas in your home, you're having these health impacts. It really motivated a lot of people to want to take action to improve their living conditions.
Well, Annie, I want to thank you so much for joining us to talk about this.
Thank you so much for having me.
We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recable cast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.